No points for guessing where I am right now. In a car! Which means we're back to another working week, although we did have a beautiful bank holiday. If there's a specific word for the feeling you get when you have to go into work but it's really nice outside, that's what I'm feeling today. My plans for reading is to continue on with The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. I picked this up as an audiobook yesterday whilst I was editing this very video. I sort of had it on in the background as I was sorting out things, and it's a really short audiobook. I think it was only like 7 hours, so that's only going to take me 3.5 listening to it at double speed, and I'm very grateful that my auditory processing is that quick and I can listen to it in that speed. So I'm going to keep going with that. I think I'm about 3.5 chapters through, so I've still got roughly 5 and a bit hours I think left. We have a physical copy at the library that I work at, so I may try and dip into that a little bit on my lunch break so that I can get even further through. Other things that I have picked up are An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, and I'm 150 pages through, so halfway. This is the story of a young black couple who get married, and they don't have much married life together until Roy is wrongfully incarcerated, and this tears them apart. The first part is told through the letters that they exchange whilst Roy is in prison. Now the back spoils it, so I don't think it's a spoiler for me to say that Roy doesn't end up serving the full 12 years that he's charged, but gets out within 5 after the tireless work of Celestial's family. And whilst he's been in prison, everything's changed. Together they had dreams of a family and starting a business, and Celestial's stuck wondering whether those are things that she can have without him. The family one is slightly harder, but the business is her own dream. So she does bespoke fabric dolls, and she's becoming famous in artist circles, which is really exciting for her, but she can't help feeling guilty, and Roy can't help feeling a little bit resentful. Third perspective is that of Andre, their best friend. He's been best friends with Celestial since they were kids, and with Roy he's known since university, and they've always been a sort of trio, although he's closer to Celestial, and it turns out that his feelings are more romantic than he ever let on. And obviously with Roy away, that gives Celestial and Andre the perfect time to explore their relationship. So it's super complex, the feelings, but I really like that you feel sorry for everyone in the situation. Like, you don't immediately fall down against Andre or indeed Celestial. The characters' families are drawn so vividly as well that you get the full picture of their lives. I'm up to the bit where Andre has made further moves towards securing Celestial's hand, and Roy is just getting out of prison and returning to them, so there's about to be a blow up soon. And another book that I finished in a day is Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. Now this isn't hard because it's a graphic novel. This is what it's like on the inside. The story is just so delightful, I didn't want it to go by so quickly. I supported Alice's Kickstarter for the very first Heartstopper comic, and I think they're up to 4 published now, or it might even be 5. And I know you can read the majority, or if not all of it, on Tapas or Tumblr, and that's what I've decided to do for the rest of the series, although I really did enjoy reading it physically, and I think they are beautiful articles to own. The way all of the spines are like pastel and line up together, truly gorgeous, and who doesn't love these covers front and back? Amazing. This book is like the confirmation of their relationship. They're making it official, coming out to family and their friends, and that was super cute. People love the Heartstopper friendship group, and I can see why now. I'm excited for the TV show that they have in development currently. All of the casting is absolutely perfect, so I'm looking forward to getting to know more of the secondary characters, as this really does follow just Nick and Charlie. I think the first 2 are more focused on Nick and Charlie, and then it sort of expands into the other characters later on, if I'm not wrong. This was an absolute delight, and I really was almost tearing up there towards the end. Somehow it's already Thursday and I haven't updated you on my reading. So what have I been up to? Happy to announce that I am now completely caught up with Heartstopper to where they are currently on Tapas. The last update was on like the 1st of June or something. So I think that puts me at near the end of volume 4 on paperback editions. Volumes 2 and 3 are such a comfort read. They're so adorable. Volume 4 is slightly different as it gets deeper into Charlie's eating disorder and the content's a little bit more triggering, but I knew that it was coming since I have read Solitaire way back when, and now the timelines have merged. I'm thinking I might have to do a read along for the rest of Alice's books. It's been so long since I've read Solitaire, and I think I've only read Radio Silence the once, which feels like a crime. And now it being Pride Month, Alice is a perfect author to read. As well as Heartstopper, I have been listening to the audiobook of Pachinko. I think I'm like 17 chapters through out of 59. It is such a huge audiobook. I think the raw time is like 18 hours, but I am listening to it, I think, at like 1.8. But that has been my company on my drives to and from work this week. First of all, we follow a young boy called Huni. He has a cleft lip and a mangled foot, I think, so he's bow-legged. He's the sweetest boy who grows into the sweetest man, and then he meets his wife, who is also a sweetheart darling, and they have a daughter, Sunja. And then it's Sunja's story that we truly follow. Sunja and her mother run a boarding house in Korea, and a pastor called Isak starts to rent from them for a while, so they grow like a friendship with this man. But then Sunja, while she goes to the market, falls in love with a man who lives in Osaka, who then gets her pregnant, and she's like, what am I gonna do? As it turns out, this man is dun 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 married. He says he would be faithful and look after her whilst he's in Korea, but he's also got a family in Japan that she wasn't aware of. Isak, being another angel, decides that he will marry Sunja to sort of rescue her, but also he, I guess, thinks it's some kind of calling for him, a purpose for him, as he was very ill as a child, so he's just happy to be alive. So a wife is definitely on his agenda. Got to the bit where they've travelled to Osaka and they're just getting used to their life now as a married couple. The bit I've just had is Sunja and her BFF, sister-in-law, cutest relationship so far, have had a run-in with the debt collectors. So Sunja has had to sell something that was precious to her in order to pay off those bills. And I knew that that would come back to bite us somehow. And now that Sunja's in Osaka and her previous lover is in Osaka as well, it can only be a matter of pages before they run into each other at some point. I'm loving it so much. Like, Sunja is quite pregnant, but I think we've still got probably quite a chunk before she has her baby. And then I imagine we're going to follow that child. I read some criticism that said that they didn't like the book as it went on just because you were kind of like expected to care for these characters on the basis that they were related to the ones from the original, like the beginning of the story. But I'm not so concerned with that now. Like, I think the cast of characters is so bright and varied, and I'm really invested in everyone, that I don't think I'm going to run into the same problems, but I'm only through like a really small slither of it, so we'll see. I definitely think audiobook was the way to go with this, but I have a reservation for Michelle Obama's Becoming, and that is released to me on the 6th as an audiobook, so then I think I'll have 13 days, like 2 weeks to read that too. So I'm going to be juggling trying to do both, and I guess Becoming takes precedent because that has a shorter loan time, whereas I have pachinko until the end of the month. But I don't want pachinko to last forever, so we'll see how I juggle those things. Oh, and the biggest problem is having too much to read. I'm reading An American Marriage before I go to bed, so I thought I'd give an update as it's been quite a while since I have. I'm this far through, so I've only got like 80 or so pages left until I finish, which is really cool. And I'm not entirely sure I enjoy the direction that it's gone. Celestial, it feels really awkward to say cheated on Roy when he was in prison with Andre, her best friend. And then as soon as Roy gets out of prison, he has a sexual relationship with a woman called Davina, and it only lasts 2 days, but it's the question of like, what is cheating? What is being married? The plan was to have Andre drive down to him in the south so that he could then travel to Celestial so that he could see her on his own without Andre being there. So that's a clever plan, and I'm just at the bit where he's about to confront Celestial. Eek! So I found this one and I picked it up because it was small, then saw that it was women's prose, so that's a good thing. And then when I read the little inside, it says, a woman recounts her progress to motherhood while remembering the death of her own mother and the childhood summers she spent with her psychoanalyst grandmother. That ticks every single one of my boxes. So I finished An American Marriage, and I have to say that by the end I definitely didn't like it as much as I did in the beginning. The first part, where it's about the letters being exchanged between Roy and Celestial and their crumbling relationship, I loved that you didn't see it all in detail or all in like narrative. The fact that you had to put 2 and 2 together on so many events just because it was only told through a letter was amazing. And then as soon as we inched into part 2, where we saw Celestial outside of the prison and what she was getting up to with Andre, I was like, oh, this is sad. Like, I mean, she's following her dream and she's doing what's best for her. So I had no problem with that, but their lack of communication was so full of tension, which I felt was completely undercut with when Roy gets out of prison. And his actions then make it so that neither of them can call each other out, because then they would just be hypocrites. And then Roy does some really questionable things in terms of what he's entitled to, and he gets a little bit pushy through the title of wife. He's like, you're my wife. In the way he says that, you just get that it means something different to him than it does to Celestial. And then we have the climax of the novel, which accumulates in the attack of a tree. Oh, slightly odd. And I can't remember whether the tree was foregrounded earlier on in the story, so it kind of felt like it was going out of nowhere, and I was like, I'm meant to care more about this than I am. I think the tension just felt a little bit superficial. I really enjoyed the parts where Andre was talking to Big Roy. Those scenes, everything about Big Roy and Olive, amazing, loved it. But then this complex toxic relationship between the 3 younger people really lost me towards the end, and the author really forces this ribbon tie perfect ending in the epilogue that just left me wanting more. It was like, okay, good, everything worked out for everyone, so kind of made me look back and think, what was the point? And the other update I had for you is with The Colour Purple. So I am 134 pages through, and I decided to get the physical copy from work rather than continue listening to it on audio, because I've been listening to Pachinko instead, and that takes priority. And even though the Colour Purple audiobook is narrated by Alice Walker herself, and I would never normally forego the idea of having the author actually read their book, I just think then it's exactly their intention, I just found it slightly more difficult to follow. I think because it's told in letters and there isn't 2 different voices for the different characters, that would have actually made the audiobook better for me. I've got to the bit where one of the sisters has started doing her like missionary work, and so she's seeing the broader world and writing back to her sister about that. That is my update for The Colour Purple. Today I finished reading Sisters by Daisy Johnson, and this is the story of sisters very close in age, September and July, and they move from their home in Oxford to a family home, the one that they were born in. Sheila is their single mother, and she is concerned over her daughter's behaviour, but is sort of pushed out of their relationship because they're so close. So it's told mostly through July's perspective, but you also get a little bit of Sheila in the middle. July is the younger sister, and she is absolutely enamoured with her older sister, and in some ways that made me think of My Sister Jodie by Jacqueline Wilson. There was something about this whole story that felt very like by the book to me, a little bit pedestrian, because I didn't think anything it was doing was particularly new. Like, you've likely seen this story in like thriller shows, or at least this story would be like a subplot of a BBC thriller. Big event, the sort of conflict, I suppose, of the novel was completely predictable, like especially if you have a codependent relationship. It's always going to be about mending it or breaking it, and in this case it was about breaking it forcefully. It's kind of bordering that line between pretentious and edgy. The writing style too, which isn't my favourite. Like, it's almost drawing attention to itself in both its plainness and purpleness. And whilst we're here, I may as well update you on Pachinko as well. I've got to book 2, which is very exciting, and I'm about 27 chapters through out of 59, so I'm slowly but surely getting there. I just really like it. I think it's great. It's got so much like family drama, and a lot of the characters are actually quite angelic, apart from Yusuf, who has some real misogynistic views, which isn't surprising at all, but still, I'm like, Kyungi is just like an absolute dream, like one of the nicest women ever, so I'm like, how could you not want her to have a job? I know it's embarrassing for you as a man to have the woman make money, but she's the most skilled cook ever, so adore the relationship between Kyungi and Sanja. Love them so much, and the fact that they have each other, as I expected he would. Of course, they were never going to be in Osaka without him coming through. He's kind of revealed himself to be this divine reason for everything that's ever happened to them in the last 12 years. That was surprising. And we also have Sunja and Isak's youngest child, who I know we follow in another book later on, like the next part, or we follow his kids. So still lots to go. The war is over now, so we'll see how this family builds themselves back up afterwards. Also, side note that Yeonjin is now back with Sunja. What a heartwarming scene. I just love it. I just feel so much for these characters, and I'm really happy that this is as long as it is, and it's taking me as long as it has been to be reading it, because I don't want to leave them just yet. It feels like a long time since I've been able to do an update in my car, so I have kept on reading Pachinko. I love it so much. Like, I just adore every single character. We've learned more about the two boys, Noah and Musazu, now. I think Musazu was 20 in the last section that I read, and he's about to become a manager of one of the Pachinko stores, and his manager Goku is just another angel. I love that even though it's a relatively depressing story, it's still got all of these characters that just have so much light and empathy, and are true like givers. And I think we may be introduced to Musazu's love interest, Yumi, a girl who works for the seamstress where Musazu gets all of his uniforms. I let out a genuine sob when it was the scene between Noah and his parents and they were talking about his tuition. Like, that just got me so much. The fact that he was like, no, I am finally going to be able to give you this money and I want you to take it because I am that boy's father. And I was just like, It was very emotionally charged and I loved it. I have been ploughing my way through Becoming by Michelle Obama on audio, and I'm borrowing it from my library, so because I had a shorter deadline I did have to put a pause in Pachinko, which I'm kind of gutted about because I was really enjoying it, but I needed to shift gears and get to Michelle, and I really enjoy listening to it in the car because it's read by Michelle herself. It's got very much a podcast vibe, which I find is a really nice way of getting my workday going. I'm enjoying it even though it is incredibly long. Like, I really enjoyed the parts about her childhood all the way up to meeting Barack and the conversations that they were having about marriage. With Pachinko I did read like 30 more minutes, so that puts me at I think 5 and a bit hours left of the book, so not long really. I'm at a new part, so I'm following Noah and Musazu more closely now, and unfortunately Sunja and Kyungi have kind of left the picture. We're very much more with the younger generation, and I do care about the family as a whole, so I don't mind that so much, but I just wish that Sunja was cameoed more. Noah frustrates me to no end. Like, his reaction to finding out who his real father was just so like it was disappointing, because myself and Sunja thought that he was going to be more mature about it, but he just decides to be like personally vindictive and just quit university, moving away and asking Sunja not to try and follow him. He had a romance whilst he was at university, but it turns out that she was a little bit obsessed with his identity as a Korean, and he didn't like that she sort of saw him through that lens, which is ironic because then when he's looking for work and gets a job in a pachinko parlor, he has to deny his Korean heritage because the proprietor won't hire foreigners. He's kind of caught between denying and acknowledging where he's come from, which puts him in a sticky situation emotionally. Then we have Musazu, who last time we saw him he had left university and started working at a pachinko parlor, and he's now worked his way up to be a manager. I think the last time I spoke he had started a relationship with one of the seamstresses. We skip forward a few years and we see that Yumi's been able to bear a child. Obviously the whole family are delighted about this, and then with almost clinical distance we're told that Yumi died in a car accident, but luckily she saved their son Solomon, which is just devastating because I wanted the best for them, and I think that's one of like the saddest things that's happened. I guess the narrative of this book so far has really been that life goes on and you can't predict it, and you just have to look out for the people around you, continue with your life even though you've got like grief and troubles. So I don't think that's going to be like the end of the line for Musazu. I read that section on my drive home and I feel like I almost hit the brakes. I just gasped because I couldn't believe it. Like, I really didn't want bad things to happen to Musazu because he's worked so tirelessly, and even though he doesn't have like the natural talents that Noah has, like I think that just means he's worked even harder in some sense. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the sort of final part of this saga will be, and into the future we go some more. So I finished Pachinko, and what is there to say other than it's one of the best books I've ever read, definitely this year and possibly in my whole life too. And whilst it's true that by the final book we have Sproul's relatively far away from Sunja, who I guess, started the whole thing. Still enjoyed these small glimpses, this window into the lives of all the people that were touched by this family in some way. I said earlier that it's quite a depressing story because these characters go through really troubled times, but I think my overall reflections of it is that it's full of hope. Like, no matter how many bad things happen, the deaths that they face, all of the characters still push forward and are still looking towards their future and trying to make it better, if not for themselves, then for their children. And I just loved getting to spend all of this time with these characters, like not only it being over 500 pages with them, but the fact we see them from birth until death in most cases. How many stories have you read where that's the case? I feel like I've lived with this family for so long, I'll be thinking about them for months and months after putting this down. I'll probably have more to say in months to come once I've had more time to percolate on it. There's just so much to discuss, so if you've read Pachinko, then please let me know because I'd love to talk about it more. Tell me who your favourite character was and your favourite moments. I particularly liked Solomon's childhood, where we got to see what Mozazu was like as a father. I think I was probably the least engaged by the parts about Mozazu's best friend. Haruki, I think his name was. Yeah. Also got perspectives from Haruki's wife, and that was probably the part I felt was the most distanced from the main family. So if you haven't read it, hopefully I've convinced you enough to add it to your TBR.